Hello, everybody. This is Michael Pucciarelli, creator of YouTube of Still Life and Landscape of Michael Pucciarelli. And I recently made an addition to my Still Life channel, and it now contains landscape photography because, I started out as landscape, and then I did a lot of still life. Now I'm doing landscape and still life photography. In this new playlist or section, I'll have camera settings, I'll have Photoshop, and I'll have equipment. And then I'm also going to talk about some of the waterfalls and landscapes that I captured, the equipment that I use, and also I'll talk about the camera settings and also talk about the Photoshop. So there's many new videos coming to this section. And I did create a recording of the Canon R5 and R6 camera settings in terms of a landscape photographer, and it's on that channel. And this short webinar will also be the recording on that channel. First, I'm going to start with the cameras, because obviously you need a camera to take a beautiful landscape photograph. I happen to be using the Mirrorless Canon R5 and R6. And I like them both. And I did some research, and I got the R6 around June of 2022. I was deciding between that and the R5, and then I got the R5 April of 2023. So, very familiar with the Canon systems, and the many systems of both the R6 and R5 are similar, but there are differences between the camera in terms of file size and purpose. So, and I'm very thankful for the Canon converter. I could use any of my non-RF lenses. Doesn't mean you should not buy an RF lens, but a lot of people use the Canon converter, and it's saving people money, and I really like it. But someday I may buy an RF lens, but right now I'm very happy with my non-RF lenses in this Canon converter. So I have a YouTube link how I use the Canon R6 on my still life photography, as well as the R5. And then as a recording, like I said, the R5 and R6 with landscape photography with camera settings. So then need lenses to take beautiful landscape photographs. And I recommend the 70-200, and I recommend the aperture 4 if you want a lightweight lens. And it's lighter than the 2.8. And I also use the heavy 100-400 in wildlife and also landscape, and taking waterfall pictures. Then I still use my prime lenses, like still life. If I need a wide angle landscape, I use the 24. If I have like a medium size, waterfall shot, I use the EF35. So for outdoor landscape, I use my prime and my 2 non-prime. So they'll help me get my job done. Now, image stabilization. I know that Nikon calls it vibrance reduction, but it's best to use a feature without a tripod. So if you use a tripod, turn it off. Well, I never use this feature. I always have it turned off, because most times I use a tripod. I could turn it on, but I just like to keep it off. Because if you're using it correctly, like with a tripod, you could have color shift problems, you could have sharpening problems. So I just would rather just turn the setting off whenever I use it. And for the manual focus and autofocus is a lot of times outdoors. I like to use the autofocus for outdoor lighting. Sometimes I can use manual focus, and then I do use manual focus for my other still life photography, light painting. I also use autofocus for my still life, but most of the times when I'm outdoors, I just want to use the autofocus. These are the camera cases where if I'm going on a hiking trip, I put them in like a Canon backpack. Canon backpacks are tough, they last a long time, but these just store my lenses and cameras in the studio. And they're tough, they don't take up a lot of space, and they're easy to work with. This is my wired cable relays. Most of the times, I just like to use a wired cable relays when I'm going outside. And I use it for my still life, but I also use it for my landscape. And the cable release on the left is for the R6, and the cable release on the right is for the R5. And this is the same cable release that I used to use with my Canon 7D. So I still use my cable releases, my old ones, with the 7D with the R5. So, there's other ways you can use, trigger the camera. You can use your iPhone, you can use a remote, you can use Wi-Fi. Technology is exploding today with the new camera systems. There's many ways to, trigger the camera. Sometimes I do use a wired remote for outdoor photography. Basically, it's the same remote for both cameras, but the wire is a little different. The remote on the right works with a 7D. It also works with the R5, and it works well. And the remote release on the left is for the 7D, where that this wire part is different than this wire part. And they both have the same capabilities, so 80 meters plus a wireless remote distance. It has 30 channels to work with, and you could change the channel. You could, someone using channel 1, you could change to channel 5. There's a very flexible timer. It has 3 digits for the hour, minute, and second. This is a lot more flexibility than a regular cable release, but if you need to get away from your camera like 15 feet or whatever, use this remote shutter. And this part right here, the receiver, this will fit in any, fit in many modern Canon hot shoes. These are my filters, where a lot of my lenses, I have a circular polarizer, I have a UV filter, I have a neutral density filter, 1 to 2 to 3 stops, I have a split tone density filter. So when I first started landscape photography, like 2010 or 11, I wanted to, it was my 7D, where you just use like a 2-stop neutral density filter. And depending on the light, I could get a very, soothing white waterfall. Then I started using the circular polarizer for other things. And then sometimes I would just use a split tone neutral density, where I would turn the ring and I would, look at the picture and I get the effect that I like. And the two of my camera lenses, 35 and the 7200, they both use the same lens size, and the same thing with the 24 to 85. And I'll talk about that in the next set of slides. So this is the variable 10-stop neutral density filter. This, I have 2 sizes, one for my 35 and one for my 24 and 85. And whenever you use this filter, you're always going to reduce the exposure, the stop, by 10 stops. If you have a lot of light out, this is a great filter to use. So if I were doing this a very sunny day, I go as wide as I can go. Before I take the shot, I would narrow my stop 2 stops more narrow, and you can get a very decent base starting exposure. This is great if if you're doing a very bright, if you're photographing a bright waterfall and it's so light, it's so white and light, you want to use one of these. where when I tighten the aperture by 2 stops, and then you could do your HDR. So you could go as wide as you can go, and then you would tighten the aperture for 2 shots, and then you take the shot. But you want to make sure that you have bright light shining at the waterfall. If you don't have this amount of light, this is not the best filter to use. No. It all depends on how powerful the light is. This is the variable end stop where I can go from 2 to 8 stops. This is great. Like the 10 stop nature filter, you could reduce many stops of light. And I have 2 sizes like the 10 stop. I have a size for the 67 and EF70, for the 35 and EF200. So they fit the both lens. So, and I would, maybe reduce it by 5 stops. And if I see what I like in the camera display, then I would just do an HDR. And the same thing with the 24 meter. I have, an end stop for the 24 for the 85 and 24. I would do the same thing. I would just probably reach at about 5 stops. If I like what I see, then I would do an HDR there. This is my level bubble cube where it's great for making photograph level. You want to make sure you level your tripod, all that good stuff. But sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't, because I want to do different things with the photograph. I want to look more at the composition. And I just want to if this is straight, then I assume this is a good photograph. But I want to spend more time looking and just scrutinizing. But sometimes, I can use this to straighten the photograph with my still life. It's not very expensive, and you want to buy several of these because I only have one, but you definitely want to buy a few of these. And you could straighten the horizontals and verticals with this cube. This is a Hoodman screen cover. This will work with most modern screens of any camera, including the R5 and R6. And this will help you look at the screen when it's really sunny. Now, another option is with the R5 and R6, you can also look through the eyepiece and you can view the photograph. When I had my 70, I could not do that, but with the R5 and R6, I can. So with modern cameras today, yeah, if you have a Hoodman screen cover, use it, but if you don't, you can just look through the eyepiece and see the photograph. These are my tripods. I like to use the plate tripods. I've been using these for years. A lot of people use the ball head. That's fine. Use what you're comfortable with. When you use a tripod, I always start with ISO 100, and then maybe go to 200 on a tripod, but I rarely do that. Now, without a tripod, I use maybe 400, 1600, 300, depending on the light. When I do use a tripod, I always want to use a cable release. I use a cable release like my still life for a lot of times with my landscape photography. And it helps to keep the camera still. I can use a remote or my cable release. And if you need to keep the camera still, I could always get a bag with a hook. Like if it's a windy day. And I have 2 tripods because one of them is a landscape. If I want to get really down low, I cut the thing out. And it's my architect tripod where this can get down really low and this cannot. So I decided to have a different function for the tripod on the left than the one on the right. These are some of my photography clubs where my still life, my architect, my dramatic, product photography, I run this by myself. My still life, fine arts, I go in every day. And then the year off, I have close to over 2,000 members. Architect's mind, but then the photograph display gallery national, I'm running with another person. And same thing with marvelous landscape photography. I organize several meetup, webinars for these meetup clubs. So the goal is to help as many people as I can as a still life artist, also as a landscape artist. So I'm here to help people. This is my business links, my Facebook, my Instagram, it's just Michael Pucciarelli, Google, LinkedIn, it's Michael-Pucciarelli, then it's Twitter, and Pucciarelli11. Here's my fine art site. Well, I provide services for, light paintings, plexiglass reflections, old-fashioned galleries. I also sell, sell many nature, galleries too. There's more portfolio. Where my plexiglass work. Black plexiglass with the reflections. My light painting, my latest light painting, still life. Here's my latest motorcycle file. The light painting, the other file is about black and white. And here's my YouTube channel. Still life and landscape on Michael Pucciarelli, which is me. Here my playlist is divided into sections. So review the playlist. You can review this recording, and this is where it would be the recording of this webinar will be in this playlist too. So if you have any questions, you can always email me at mpucciarelliart2016@gmail.com. You can always, get in touch with me with, Facebook groups, LinkedIn, Instagram. So there's many ways to get in touch with me: LinkedIn, Twitter. Thank you for listening to the webinar. Maybe consider liking and subscribing if this seems interesting to you, landscape and still life. Thank you for listening to this webinar.